What's up?
We've had company.
I say, this is outrageous.
Ask Mrs. Hudson to come in here, will you?
Right. Mrs. Hudson?
Yes?
Oh, there you are. Will you come up here at once, please?
Oh, coming, sir. Mercy me, Mr. Holmes. What has happened?
Who called while we were out, Mrs. Hudson?
Just a young lady. The one who said you wanted her to wait for you. And a nice-looking old gentleman with
Our
her.
friends again, Watson.
Friends?
What did the young lady look like?
Oh, I couldn't see her face. She had a heavy black veil on. But she had such a nice way with her. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Holmes, if I've done anything wrong. But you did say I should always let clients come in and wait for you.
Don't worry, Mrs. Hudson, don't worry. You had no way of knowing. It's quite all right, quite all right. Now, don't worry, Mrs. Hudson.
Don't worry. Where on earth's the musical box?
They didn't get it.
Didn't get it? Where is it?
It's in your hand.
Huh?
That biscuit jar. Take the biscuits off the top. Now put your hand inside, and you'll find the music box.
Well done, Holmes. Well done. Amazing. Phew. Nice fresh smell. Like a pub after closing time. I say, Holmes.
What?
It's morning.
Allow me to congratulate you on a brilliant bit of deduction. It's not a transposition, nor a polygraph transposition, nor a trigraph, nor any known form of decoding.
How about the Morse code? Have you tried that?
Yes, at about 3 o'clock this morning.
I'm sorry, old man. I was only trying to help. Oh, do me a favor. Not again. Must have heard that thing 1,000 times. Kept me awake all night.
Not a very distinguished composition, I grant you.
You know perfectly well I don't know one tune from the other. When I was a kid, my people tried to have me taught the piano. I've always felt sorry for that old teacher of mine. The poor old girl finally reached the point of numbering the keys for me. 1, 2, 3, 4. Even then, I never progressed beyond...
Numbering the keys, Watson. The 19th key of the keyboard is the 19th letter of the alphabet. S. Here. Write this down when I give it to you, old fellow, will you? The first altered note. Write S first. Now, the 8th key is H. The 5th key, E. The 12th key, L. The 6th key, F.
S-H-E-L-F. Shelf.
Your piano lessons were not in vain, old fellow. You've solved it. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, old bean. Hold it.
We now have 2/3 of the message. Behind books, third shelf, secretary, Dr. S. Presumably, these are the first and second portions of the message.
And this gang has the first and third parts of it.
Precisely.
Then it's a stalemate?
Yes, Commissioner, but we can't leave it like that. There's no doubt in my mind that they'll try to secure our third of the message that's missing.
Well, I assume you've taken every precaution to guard the Clifford music.
Oh, yes, it's carefully hidden at Baker Street with Dr. Watson on guard. However, I'm reasonably certain that, difficult as it may be, we can find the plates even without the missing part of the message.
Behind books, third shelf, secretary, Dr. S.
And outside of the fact that Davidson hid the Bank of England plate somewhere in London, Mr. Holmes, I don't see that we've progressed at all.
Allow me to point out to you, sir, the key words, Dr. S. It looks as if the plates were hidden in the house of the doctor. Whether S stands for his first or last initial remains to be determined by a process of elimination.
Well, there must be 10,000 doctors in London with S for a first or last initial.
Precisely. And every one of them will have to be questioned in person. That's why I say this is a task for Scotland Yard.
It's a task, all right. But Scotland Yard has searched worse haystacks and found a needle.
Well, for the time being, I'll leave the matter in your hands, gentlemen.
We'll call you if and when we get a lead on our mysterious Dr. S.
Thank you. In the meantime, I intend to follow up a little clue concerning a cigarette. You're certain of the identification of the tobacco?
Absolutely. I have made up this special blend for only 3 customers. It is almost pure Egyptian, with a mixture of latakia for added body, and a pinch of perique. Merely a whisper, as one might say, for elusive fragrance.
Yes, yes. And the 3 customers?
Major Wilson in Bombay, India. Mrs. Catherine Leamington Smith in Ireland.
Yes, and the 3rd?
Mrs. Hilda Courtney of Park Mansions, Bryanston Square.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You've been most helpful.
It is a pleasure to have been of service, Mr. Holmes.
Yes?
Mrs. Courtney?
Yes.
My name is Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, do come in.
Thank you.
I've heard of you, of course, Mr. Holmes. I believe we have a mutual friend in Sir Edward Brookdale. He's spoken to me of you quite often.
Indeed.
And to what good fortune am I indebted for this visit?
I think you know Mrs. Courtney.
Well, I did get a summons for speeding last week. But outside of that, I don't think I'm of any interest to the police.
Oh, come now, Mrs. Courtney. You seem to forget that you and I have met before.
I'm sorry. I'm sure I would have remembered meeting the great Sherlock Holmes. Please sit down.
Thank you.
You say we met before.
Yes. At the home of Mr. and Mrs. Kilgore, 143B Hampton Road.
Kilgore? I don't think I know anyone of that name.
Well, I didn't say you knew them. As a matter of fact, you called on them when they were out.
I don't understand, Mr. Holmes.
Really? And you were dressed rather differently.
Indeed. Cigarette?
Thank you. Thank you. You know, Mrs. Courtney, people generally forget, in assuming a disguise, that the shape of the ear is an almost infallible means of recognition and identification to the trained eye.
Evidently, you've mistaken me for someone else.
Oh, no, not at all. Though naturally, I expected your denial. But when you paid your visit to my rooms at Baker Street, you carelessly left behind another identification. They're, identical, aren't they?
Yes, I must admit they are. You see, Mr. Holmes, to catch one as clever as you, I had to use a very special lure. I knew you'd be unable to resist the bait of my cigarette, having read with great interest your monograph on the ashes of 140 different varieties of tobacco.
I should advise you not to move, Mr. Holmes.
I must congratulate you on your ingenuity, Mrs. Courtney. It was indeed a brilliantly designed trap.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Praise from a master is indeed gratifying. I shall always cherish the memory of your flattering words.
Memory?
Precisely. I'm afraid these gentlemen have a most regrettable task to perform.
Unless, of course, you care to turn over the missing musical box with your pledge to take no action against us in the future.
I'm afraid that will be impossible.
I thought that would be your answer. Hamid! Careful! Careful. There's no need to be unnecessarily rough with our distinguished guest.
You realize, Mr. Holmes, that your demise will not take place here, the corpus delicti, you know.
Well, naturally.
Shall we go?
It's so fearfully awkward having a dead body lying about. Don't you agree, Mr. Holmes?
Another dead body shouldn't weigh too heavily on your conscience, Mrs. Courtney. Do you mind if I have a cigarette?
I don't see why not. Be careful, Hamid.
It's the brakes, they bind. Thank you, Colonel Kavanagh. It's very considerate of you.
You'll be happy to know, Mr. Holmes, that your death will be a painless one. Hamid, attach this to the motor of the taxi. That little attachment, my dear Mr. Holmes, contains the deadly fluid known as monosulfide. The Germans use it with gratifying results in removing their undesirables. Start the motor. Tape his mouth. Now, up with him, Hamid. You find yourself like Muhammad's coffin, Mr. Holmes, suspended between heaven and earth. Plenty of fuel in the tank? Good. It would be too bad to have anything go wrong through so simple an oversight.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Sherlock Holmes?
No, I'm Dr. Watson.
Oh, of course, Dr. Watson. How stupid of me.
Oh, so, this is stupid of me. Won't you come in?
Well, I really came to see Mr. Holmes.
Oh, I'm afraid he's out. I don't know when he'll be back. Perhaps there's something I can do. Won't you sit down?
Thank you.
You know, Sherlock Holmes and I have been engaged on a great many cases.
Oh, really?
Yes, indeed. As a matter of fact, this very moment, we're involved in one of the most baffling... Oh, well, won't you tell me your trouble, and I may be able to help you.
It's very kind of you, Dr. Watson. Perhaps if I wouldn't be imposing too much.
Imposing? Oh, there's no imposition. No imposition at all. A pleasure, I assure you. Now, tell me all about it, Miss
Williams.
Mrs. Williams.
I live in Surrey, Dr. Watson, and I've come up to London in sheer desperation. My only sister has disappeared, and the local police seem utterly unable to find her.
Well, Holmes and I solved a case exactly like that once. Very interesting, as far as I remember. I call it the adventure of the solitary cyclist. Oh, sorry. Now I come to think of it, it wasn't so very similar. Entirely different. I think what I was saying. Where were we?
She's only 17, Dr. Watson, and until she disappeared last Thursday, she seemed to be in the best of spirits.
Possibly a romantic entanglement?
Oh, no, nothing of the sort. She left no note, didn't even pack a bag, no explanation. She just started to walk to the village from our house in broad daylight and simply vanished from the face of the earth.
Oh, there.
Might I have a glass of water?
Glass of water. Have one minute. There you are, my dear.
Thank you, Dr. Watson.
No, you're not to cry anymore. You must pull yourself together.
Oh, I feel much better already knowing that you're going to help me. Oh, Dr. Watson, look!
Good heavens! Get through the fire brigade, quickly!
Haven't you a fire extinguisher?
By George, we have in the kitchen. Don't you worry, Miss Williams. We'll have this thing out in no time. That's got it. Get some air. Well, you see, there was no need for the fire brigade after all. I hope you weren't too frightened, Miss Williams. Oh, gone. That's the trouble with them. They always lose their heads in an emergency. Well... a musical box. Great Scott!
Well? Good.
And Holmes?
By now, Mr. Holmes has no doubt exchanged his violin for a harp.
Always assuming that heaven is his destination. And now that we have the missing musical box... 19th note. 19th letter.
Yes.
Leaving the front reception room, we come into the main hall, where Dr. Johnson was in the habit of passing through to have his meager meals in the dining room opposite, in company with his friend and biographer, James Boswell. We will now pass up the stairway, which remains in its natural wood finish, just as it was when the good doctor was here. The framed etching on the wall is believed to have been presented to Dr. Johnson by the distinguished painter, Sir Joshua Reynolds.
I've been told here that picture was given in by Mrs. Thrale, and it's definitely not a Reynolds.
Is that important, my dear? Oh, I'm sorry.
This way, ladies and gentlemen, please, this way.
Move along, children, move along.
The secretary's not on this floor.
Patience, Hamid.
I've a feeling
My
that...
dear Colonel, with Sherlock Holmes out of the way, what could go wrong?
And here we have the Garrett Library, in which Dr. Johnson wrote his famous dictionary, and in which you will see also many of the great man's books and other items of interest. Step forward, ladies and gentlemen, please, step forward. Standing in the corner is the secretary, which contains many of the original works by the literary genius. On this table, Dr. Johnson's cat, Hodge, used to sleep while his master worked. A strange thing about this cat, ladies and gentlemen, was its love of oysters. They do say that the dear doctor often went hungry to find the cat that delicacy. What a pity. Now we will visit the quay room, which is immediately below us, in which you will see the very bed in which Dr. Johnson died.
What did he die of?
Gout. Just gout. This way, ladies and gentlemen. Mind the steps, please.
Your keys.
Third shelf up. The knife. Gentlemen, the Bank of England plates.
Well, Mrs. Courtney, so we meet again.
He hasn't been there, you say? Holmes, where on earth have you been? I've been trying to get you at the club, at Scotland Yard, all over London.
You were looking for me in the wrong places.
Holmes, terrible things happened. I've been duped. That woman, she made a complete fool of me.
Well, what do you mean?
Well, she came here, let off a smoke bomb. I thought the whole place was on fire, and my first thought was to save the musical box.
No need to say any more. She has the box.
Yes.
Don't blame yourself too much, old fellow. She is an extremely clever antagonist. Smoke bomb, you said? Well, you can console yourself with the thought that your charming friend is at least a reader of yours.
What do you mean?
If I remember correctly, you wrote about my little experiment with smoke and the cry of fire in a story you entitled A Scandal in Bohemia, which has just appeared in the Strand magazine.
All right, old boy. Don't rub it in.
Well, it may cheer you up to know that you made a fool of me, too. That cigarette stub was planted here for one express purpose. We're going to bandaging around this place.
Bandaging? What's the matter, Holmes? You hurt?
Explanations will have to wait until later. At the moment, we're faced with a problem which I fear is insurmountable.
Come over here, old boy, will you?
Right. Our opponents are in possession of all three parts of the code. And here are we, while the Bank of England plates pass into their possession.
Cheer up, old fellow, cheer up. As Dr. Samuel Johnson once said, there's no problem the mind of man can set that the mind of man cannot solve.
What's that, old fellow?
I was just quoting Dr. Samuel Johnson. He said there is
Thank you, Watson. Thank you.
I must congratulate you, Mr. Holmes. You're far more clever than I thought.
Thank you, Mrs. Courtney. Praise from you is indeed gratifying. I shall always cherish the memory of your flattering words.
Memory? Oh, thank you.
And now I have a most regrettable task to perform.
Holmes! Coming, Holmes! Holmes, you all right?
Perfectly, thank you, old fellow, but I think this gentleman on the floor requires some medical attention. We must see that he looks his best, you know, when he's hanged.
Take them in charge.
A brilliant antagonist. It's a pity her talents were so misdirected. Will you see that these plates are returned to the Bank of England, Inspector?
I still don't understand how you solved it, Mr. Holmes.
It's entirely due to Dr. Watson. He gave me the clue when he mentioned Dr. Samuel Johnson.
Well, congratulations, Doctor.
Oh, thank you, Inspector. I don't think I'd have done it entirely without Mr. Holmes's help, you know.